I mean, it's an interesting fact, but it almost kind of sounds like an urban legend. But according to the book Marvel Comics: The Untold Story, the day Stan Lee was hired was the day that Captain America #1 rolled off the printing press.
Really?
Yeah. Welcome back to the Hateful Geeks. Anyway, this is a mini episode that we decided to do. You true believers out there, as Stan Lee liked to say, which is really, really hard to say in the past tense.
Right.
It makes me real sad because of, baby, moving, job promotion. And as we are recording this, it is the night before Thanksgiving. So
busy as fuck.
Right. We have all been busy as fuck. So we appreciate.
We appreciate your patience with us, honestly. And it was hard to do this episode. I'll come out and say it. How do we talk about Stan Lee? I mean, like he's been a part of my life. I'm sure your life since I
discovered comics.
We knew what comics were.
Right. And like I said, it's real hard to talk about him in the past tense.
It is.
And it's kind of, we just wanted to take a break and then at the same time, do a little retrospective of Stan Lee.
Yeah. I mean, granted, he was 95.
Right.
So he's had a long, good life. He recently lost his wife as well.
Yeah, it was last year. So, and as the saying goes, when you lose your partner in life, usually they're not far behind. It's right.
Sad to say. I mean, like you said, since we knew comics, you knew who Stan Lee was. Stan Lee was at the beginning of Marvel when it wasn't even Marvel yet. It was something else.
It was Timely and then Atlas and then Marvel.
Right. So he was.
So yeah. I mean, I remember there's a Spider-Man game, and I played the audio for you just a few minutes ago, where he narrates.
Whoa,
man, I'm good with my words. He narrates the.
I was going to say something, but this is not the kind of episode.
He narrates the video game, and he begins with "Welcome, true believers." That's as good as I can get in his old man voice.
Yeah, no one could be Stan.
No,
you don't have to try. It's okay.
No, yeah,
no. But what I was going to say. And you kind of segued into it without knowing you segued into it.
As I do.
As you said, narrator. It reminded me of The Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah.
Marriage. Which we also lost him as well. William Goldman.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Two people in a matter of, 3 days?
Something like that. And I hate to say it because death always comes in threes.
It does.
But
I hope it's nobody else I don't want somebody else in the entertainment industry. Yeah, can we get a politician to die? I'm not going to name names, but
yeah. And in this retrospective we did, we kind of stayed away from his conflicts with Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko, and him suing Marvel about 10 years ago.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, well, we gotta say we can mention those things because it was part of his life.
It was.
In all honesty, that stuff, it's business, right? As much as you want to love the characters, as much as you want to love the books, as much as you want to love the movies or whatever, it's still a business,
right?
And creative differences are going to happen, especially between artists, right? I mean, that's some of the most
artists and multi-billion-dollar companies,
right? So I mean, I think a lot of people know about those disputes, and those that don't know, I mean, if you want to touch on it real quick, by all means, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, when we get to it, I kind of do, because we'll get to their collaborations, but
yeah. So I did a little bit of my own reading because I knew who Stan Lee. Everybody knows who Stan Lee is. If you're not even a hardcore comic, wow, it's hard to say, hardcore comic book fan, you know who Stan Lee is. You've seen his cameos. You've seen him in every Marvel movie. You've seen him around anything that's related to Marvel. So everyone knows who he is.
Right.
So I wanted to do a little bit more deeper dive.
Yeah.
So I started looking at the research, like I said, way back when it was like Atlas, or before it was Atlas first.
It was Timely, then Atlas.
Timely, then Atlas. And he was talking about, like, in a book I think he had written with somebody else, that he used to be the person who would dip the pens and the ink and hand them
Yeah.
to the artist. Like that's how he started.
I do have I do have this in my notes, but like I began with really like Stan Lee was born, Stanley Martin Lieber on December 28th, 1922 in Manhattan, New York to Jewish immigrant parents from Romania. So looking at his date, like I didn't realize it when I did the research, but he was knocking on the door on 96.
Yeah.
Really was.
He was close.
And he was influenced a lot as a kid by Errol Flynn, who he was the first person to play Robin Hood in the Adventures of Robin Hood. It was I believe it's the first talkie Robin Hood movie, but he was a movie usher.
Nice.
So he's the golden age of cinema, just sitting in the back, just watching all these movies, which is, think about like 1939, where you had it's kind of called the best year of cinema, where you had Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, stuff like that.
Right. Also right around, like the First World War, Second World War.
Second World War.
Yeah. Which he actually went and fought in.
He did. Yeah. Yeah. And even before the war, his first writing book, he would write obituaries and press releases for the National Tuberculosis Center in New York, growing up in the Bronx. And as you mentioned, he became an assistant at then known Timely Comics with the help of his cousin Jen, who was married to the editor, Martin Goodman.
Yep.
And I couldn't find anything to corroborate this. And so I don't know. It almost sounds like an urban legend.
We don't fact check here. It's fine.
Right. Yeah. It's an interesting fact, but it almost kind of sounds like an urban legend. But according to the book, Marvel Comics, The Untold Story, the day Stan Lee was hired was the day that Captain America #1 rolled off the printing press.
Really?
Yeah. That's according to that book. It's one of those things where I was just like, is this an urban legend, or are you trying to build up a legend that doesn't need built up anymore?
Right. Yeah, I didn't read about that, because my research, I'll be honest, was his Wikipedia page. It's 100%. It's a good page to read because it has a lot of stuff on there about him. And it didn't mention anything about that. Now, I do know it mentioned that he like you said, started off being an assistant to the writers, right? Or the artists, and he would help hand them things. And then his first, I think, true gig was to write in the fill text, right? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, because what he would do, because back then, it's not like today where the artist can live in California and the writer lives in Boston, where you can, I don't know, email the script or.
They were all in the same room.
Yeah, that's why the Marvel bullpen.
Yeah,
quote unquote. You can't see my hands.
And you have to know that you have to be able to date this by me telling you he had to dip an ink, a pen in ink. That was still when you had to dip pens in ink.
Right. His first printed work was a text story called Captain America Foils the Traitor's Revenge.
Yes.
Which is just deeped into just.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But that's when you said that was when Captain America 1 rolled off. That's what I was thinking. I swore one of his first projects that he worked on was actually filling in on Captain America.
Yeah, it was Captain America issue 3. So we're talking in the span of 2 months, because I don't know if Captain America was a monthly at the time or even bi-monthly. That's 4 months.
And at this time, wasn't DC the premier comic industry right then? When he was still here, when he was still in Timely, wasn't that when DC's big heyday was out?
Yeah, because you had their Superman and Batman in back-to-back years.
Yeah. So as across the country, people are just getting introduced to these giant characters from DC. Here's Stan Lee coming in on the base level of Marvel, trying to build them up, and now look where they've come today. That's just ridiculous to think about.
And even in his first story, he's introducing things that are ideas that are still known and still used today, because in that story, it's the first time Cap had ever used his shield to ricochet off the wall.
Well, that was his idea.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? It was him and somebody else's idea to actually. They mentioned that it was actually their original idea. That's when it actually was the first issue that he actually showed him throwing his shield.
Yeah, because the first couple of appearances of Captain America, he's his shield is actual like a knight's shield,
right?
And this is the first part where it's
a circular. Yeah.
So, on the back of that, at age 19 years old, he becomes the interim editor.
Yeah. That's
of
nuts.
Marvel. That is crazy to me.
Was it Marvel then, or was it
Timely? I'm sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
Timely Comics. And like he stayed that for much of the time until 1972, where he decided to take a step back. And I say much of the time because he went to the war.
Yeah.
He went to World War II.
Yeah. And this is part where I actually kind of read a little bit about too as well. Is he went? I don't know if it didn't mention he got drafted or not.
I couldn't find that either.
But he definitely went to the war.
Yeah.
Regardless, thank you for your service, Sir Stan. Appreciate everything for that. But I found out he actually became, he had the title of entertainer because he actually would actually do entertainment for the troops.
Right. So yeah. So what he did is that at first he was in the Signal Corps.
Yeah.
Which was, they were trained to install telephones and stuff like that. But then they found out about his writing skills before the war and all that. And then he was given a job title playwright.
Yes, that's what it was. Thank you.
And they were only given to 9 individuals.
Yes, I read that.
And the other individuals that are well known would be Charles Addams, who created the Addams Family, Frank Capra. I'm sorry. He directed It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And then Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss.
Wow. That's nuts.
Yeah.
That is fucking crazy.
Yeah. That's nuts to me. And like he even said like all the job was like writing training materials,
right,
and writing the films.
Well,
I would imagine the propaganda films.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. But they do mention he actually wrote a comic as well when he was over there. And they actually mentioned he wrote a comic type characters for things like that, like the pamphlets and the training materials. He actually would draw like these comic looking characters as well.
I mean, which makes sense,
right? So then when he came back from the war, is this about the time where he was about to give up?
It's a little bit after, because like when he came back, that's when he met and married Joan.
Yeah.
Their marriage is a little crazy to me, at least. Huh.
Marriages.
I've been through one, but she signed her divorce papers from her first husband and then went into the next room to marry Stan, which is true love.
Well, and back then it was a different time, right? Like you didn't just date somebody. There was no like you didn't just go out on dates for a long time. That wasn't the time. It was you found somebody, and if you liked them, you got married.
Yeah, I mean, they got married on December 5th, 1947, and then their daughter Joan was born in 1950.
Okay,
and this is kind of the time where he started getting tired, because the 50s, like we're talking. Like the Comics Code Authority was just created.
Yeah. And
that was, the whole book Seduction of the Innocent, and Batman and Robin are gay, and horror books are feeding into the delinquency of teenagers.
Right. And you got to think at this time too, comics weren't popular with adults then.
No, they weren't.
It was not an adult like it is today. It wasn't adult driven media. It wasn't anything. It wasn't made for adults. It was essentially made for kids.
Yeah, it was a kids media,
right.
And it was just meant to be consumed by kids. So in the 50s, like he's drawing, or not drawing. I'm sorry, he's writing romance westerns, because that's really like all you could get away with, because it was just so vanilla at the time.
Right.
Because even Batman's fighting space aliens. He's not fighting the Joker anymore.
Right.
So it wasn't until really the Justice League came along in March of 1960.
Yeah.
And this is where DC's killing Marvel.
Yeah.
Because DC, they've reinvigorated Green Lantern. This is when Hal Jordan's introduced. This is around the time that Barry Allen's introduced. And Martin Goodman went to him and he's like, I want a superhero team. And this is like the legend where Joan kind of said like, well, why don't you just write what you would like to read?
Right.
And he wanted to read about superheroes that have problems, that have foibles. They're not 100, like it's not Superman where nothing can hurt him. He's perfect.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to touch on a little bit, and that's what I was talking about when he got tired, because there was this whole, I heard this story, and kind of what you just mentioned, where Joan comes in and says, why don't you write what you want to read?
Yeah.
And what I had heard actually is that he had written this story, and we'll tell you what it is, fans, if you don't know what it is already, but we'll tell you what it is. But he had written about this family, and he threw it away.
Yeah.
And Joan actually got it out of the trash and said, no, this is it. This is the one. And you're right. At the time, we didn't have superheroes with flaws. We had
No.
superheroes that were perfect, or always just, or always like anything like that.
Right.
And he wanted to talk about like how they pay a rent. What happens if they get sick?
Yeah.
What happens, like daily problems, like that would make a superhero relatable.
Right. And he got tired of the cookie cutter thing that had been happening at the time, where like for instance, because I just recently watched an episode because it was on cable, the Adam West Batman show.
Yeah.
Like we look at it kind of like it's campy and, cartoony, but that's what the comics were at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's the only thing you can get away with.
They were for kids. They were supposed to be fun, enjoyable, clean humor, like nothing bad.
Yeah. And this is where we get into the Jack Kirby thing, because he teamed with Jack Kirby with Fantastic Four, and
that's what we were talking about.
Well, they kind of created the Marvel method, where it was coined the Marvel method, where you don't see this at all anymore. Is that what he would do? Is he would mail the artist the synopsis. The artist would then draw it out, and then he would put in the dialogue.
Right. So think about that. Think about that process. Like, yeah. So you're giving an artist free will to take what you want the story to be about.
Yeah.
Draw it out, and then he comes in with the dialogue.
Right.
Like, that is crazy to think about. Because usually you want to have dialogue first. You want to know every conversation, so you could draw all the images to show what's happening on that block.
Yeah, because you don't know like how big you want the dialogue boxes to be.
Exactly.
And it was so successful with Kirby that from what I read, it went on to Ditko, and it went on to Bill Everett, who created Daredevil with him.
Yeah,
and that's what it was in like the 60s and 70s, really.
Right. So for those of you who didn't know who we were talking about, we talked about the Fantastic Four. That was like his first.
That was the first big
Marvel, like, boom. Here, look at our heroes that are flawed and have problems and have real problems.
Yeah, you've got the Thing, who, while powerful, doesn't like the way he looks.
Yeah, I mean, he's a giant rock.
Right.
How would you feel?
Yeah, you've got the cocky, arrogant Johnny Storm, and you've got Reed, who I think one of the best things about Reed is just how guilty he feels about.
Right. Well, and they kind of show that by he's always trying to fix it. He's so smart. Like, Reed Richards is one of the most intelligent beings in the Marvel universe.
Right.
And he has these great powers. They all do. But his whole
thing is that I fucked up my best friend.
I messed everybody up.
Right.
And now we have to deal with this every day.
Yeah. And then that was so successful that it led to the Hulk.
Yes.
And, the Hulk's issue of like, it's this Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
Where he's got this monster inside of him that he hates, doesn't want to let out.
And when it is out, it does cause destruction and chaos.
Right.
It's uncontrollable. It's like all these things that you would not really think about a hero. You think of a hero as being always in control, always able to do what he needs to get the job done. Where the Hulk is a monster, so to speak.
Right. I mean, it's very Hulk smash. Obviously.
It is very Hulk smash. So we've touched on Fantastic Four. We've touched on Daredevil. We touched on the Hulk. Let's just keep going on the characters that Stan Lee helped create.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. I'm trying to remember, because after that I think Iron Man was after that.
Oh, well, yeah. If you want to talk about a character with
we'll
flaws,
talk about Iron Man.
Holy shit! Yeah. Like, he's an alcoholic. He has depression. He's like obsessed with women and money and all these things. Even though he's this genius, even though he's like this super really good guy, he has all of these issues.
And the very first issue that he had really was the piece of shrapnel.
Yeah.
Because back in 60, I'm going to ballpark 63, 64 when Iron Man was created, let's say. And we don't have the medical technology that we have now.
Not even close.
So he has to have this metal sheet over his chest to keep this piece of shrapnel from touching his heart. Like, this sheet is a magnet, essentially.
Which is awesome. I mean, okay, so I am a Iron Man lover. I'll give you that right now out the gate. I think he's the best superhero, but that's just me. So but I think one reason I do love him and I do think he's so great is because he is so relatable. I mean, how many people have issues like alcoholism or things like that?
I'm going to point to one issue where I think you guys obviously have in common. It's not alcoholism, but you have a pacemaker.
Yeah, I do.
So that's
It helps
another.
me keep my heart going.
Right,
Same,
yeah.
same, just like him. He has to have technology to keep his heart going. One thing I did want to talk about a little bit too is you mentioned like his first like comic, right?
Yeah.
So one thing I thought I heard about way back when was that his very first superhero was the Destroyer.
I mean, that I didn't read, but I mean, that's entirely possible.
So like his first superhero co-creation was the Destroyer, but in Mystic Comics. This was in August 1941.
Yeah. So it's shortly after he's.
So I didn't know if you knew anything about the Destroyer, because that's something I've never heard of, except for the one that's like in the Asgardian basement.
The one series that I read about the Destroyer was I want to say about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe even longer. Robert Kirkman did a mini series of the Destroyer.
Really?
And he's just old man killing things.
Old man.
I mean,
killing things.
in a Robert Kirkman way.
Right.
I mean, they updated it to as if he was like living in modern times.
Really?
And like obviously like he's not, obviously he's not a young man. So the Destroyer, I will admit that I don't know very much about.
Okay. I don't think many people do.
Right.
That was just a question I had, because I want to go through all of his characters, right? And I think you start at the beginning, but then like you said, we talk about the Fantastic Four, the Hulk, Iron Man, Daredevil. I mean, he created the X-Men.
Yeah.
Like the X-Men. Like, if you want to talk about flawed characters that you can relate to, how about teenagers? I mean, come on. Like
teenagers with powers that they don't understand.
Well, the powers they don't understand, they're being persecuted, they're always being hunted, they're always being like called freaks, like all this stuff. Like, he gave us such good characters that weren't just heroes. Like,
yeah,
we don't really fall into that stagnant, genre of heroes.
I think he. I don't want to say anti-hero, but like he discovered I think he was a little bit before his time in that.
I think he was. I wouldn't say anti-hero. I wouldn't
say anti-hero either.
Because these are still heroes, right? These are just realistic heroes.
Exactly. Like, that's the much better phrase than anti-hero.
What was that movie with Will Smith where he's a superhero? Hancock. Like, he was Hancock before Hancock was like around.
And yeah. And I mean, before, I don't want people to think that we're forgetting about. Well, I think we're just saving him for last. Really, Spider-Man.
Oh yeah,
which is his greatest. Me personally, and I will say I am very, very biased, but I think Spider-Man is his greatest creation.
I mean, he's also done Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, yes,
he's also created Thor.
Should have said Doctor Strange and Thor before Spider-Man.
Doctor Strange, Thor, Ant-Man.
He did do Ant-Man, Giant Man, Wasp.
Yeah. So like
all of these people,
all of the Avengers, literally
the Avengers, yeah,
like literally the Avengers. Black Panther. He did Black Panther.
He did the Falcon. He was Black Panther, the first African superhero.
Right.
Falcon's the first African American superhero. And I think he has touched on it before too. Is that the X-Men were kind of his allegory for the civil rights movement.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, you think about all the direct correlations between the two.
Right.
They're a minority of people. They're being persecuted against. They're trying to be put in camps or put in like separate groups from the normal people.
Right.
Like, absolutely. Like, that was exactly what he was doing to show the obsceneness of it. Like,
the absurdity of it, really.
That's what I meant. I don't think I mean obscene.
No, I mean, there were a lot of things at the time that were obscene,
right?
But I just wanted to touch on Spider-Man.
Oh no,
only because
I think Spider-Man is probably one of the most popular.
Oh, without a doubt. Like, I mean, Spider-Man is the flagship, of Marvel.
And I would think, like, again, you're looking at a teenager at the start. He's a teenager. He's in high school.
Yeah, he's 16 when he gets bit by that spider.
Right.
And I attached myself to Spider-Man because of just the glasses, the brown hair that is now turned black. for me at least. And then like I'll admit that I got bullied when in grade school and a little bit in high school.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like that just latched onto me real
hits
quick.
nail on the head for a lot of kids.
A lot of, yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're getting into a time now as he's going through creating all these characters, right? You slowly see the nation diverge from this kid cultured comic books to adults are now. Maybe it's because the kids grew up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think a lot of it is the kids have grown up because especially when it kind of hit peak in the 90s.
Right.
Is because there's 70
I mean, you
kids.
start in the 40s.
Yeah.
Right. With his comics. And then you get into like the 60s and the 70s with like his major comics.
Right.
And these kids are now in the 80s, 90s are teenagers, young adults.
Yeah. You know, you got kids who are in the 70s or, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, they're late 20s, early 30s. And like these are what they grew up with.
And then you start to see this flip of culture towards comics. It's not just for kids anymore. It's for everybody.
Yeah.
And he got to write for everybody now. It wasn't just, you know, trying to appease children's boredom.
Yeah. And I think he gets credit for the civil rights movement with the X-Men. But like one thing that I don't think he gets a lot of credit for is how like he defied the Comics Code Authority in the 70s with a Spider-Man story where Harry Osborn does drugs.
Yeah.
It was like a no stand up to drugs kind of thing. Or, you know, he wanted to talk about the effects of drugs. I've seen that cover.
Drugs. It's creepy.
Yeah. He wanted to talk about the effects of drugs and on our society at the time, because, you know, you got LSD, I don't think crack was around at the time.
In the 70s?
No. Was crack in the 80s?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're looking at psychedelic drugs.
Yeah, we're looking
at intravenous drugs.
We're looking at pot.
You're looking at pot. You're looking at a rise of HIV, like due to drug use, like all these bad things because of drugs. And he went out and made a comic about drugs.
Right. And it was the first book that it's Amazing Spider-Man 96 through 98. And they were the first issues without the Comics Code Authority stamp of approval.
Really?
And that kind of led to the end of the Comics Code, because no one uses that now.
Right. Well, and Stan was like, fuck that.
It's kind of, like you kind of look at it, it's laughable now.
Right. I agree.
But
you have like all of these characters that get into bad situations. Like, it's not just them saving people anymore. Like,
right.
I mean, think about like Daredevil, like all the crap he went through, you know. I mean, was he the first blind superhero?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Because I mean, I can't really think of another blind.
Think of anyone. Yeah,
right. Well, he's not. I guess he's not truly blind. I guess, but he is blind.
Yeah,
but whatever.
And I don't think he was. I'm trying to think now because I lost my train of thought. I had a thought, and now I'm thinking.
Sorry.
No, now I'm thinking. Was he the first blind? But yeah, I don't think he gets a lot of credit because that was just step one of dismantling the Comics Code Authority.
Yeah.
And I don't,
Well, that just shows like he was his own man. Like he did what he wanted to do.
He was like, I'm imagining just like mid 50s Stan Lee just like flipping the bird over and over.
Like fuck all y'all. Like, I'm doing what I want.
Continually calling them true believers.
Like, yeah, I mean, gosh, he was an icon. He was a legend. Like, we would not have what we have today. In Marvel, at least, we would not have it without Stan Lee.
No, yeah. And, they were right to name him Chairman Emeritus in the early 90s.
Right. I mean, he's received so many awards. So many awards.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I can name all of them.
Right. I think, but like the most prestigious one was George W. In 2008, awarded him the National Medal of Arts.
And yeah, which I didn't know was a thing. I'll be honest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they haven't. I did my research on it, and they haven't. And this is the only political thing I'll say. They haven't given it since 2016 because guess who's in the White House now?
Someone who doesn't read.
Right. But it's essentially like how they do like the President's Honors and or the Kennedy Center Honors is what I'm trying to think of. It's because that's kind of given to like entertainers more of like actors and musicians, and stuff like that. This is the writers version of that.
Right. What's crazy is he's like in 2 Hall of Fames too.
Yeah,
because he's in the Comic Book Association Hall of Fame, which is what it's called. It's called the Will Eisner Award.
The Will, yeah.
And then he's actually in Jack Kirby Hall of Fame, which is so funny because Jack
How
Kirby
much they
how much they were butted heads together,
they
how much
did.
they disputed. So let's touch on that. Like, so we've already mentioned he's kind of his own man, right?
Yeah.
He's going to do what he wants to do no matter what.
Right.
So I feel like that's a good way to get into kind of some of the falling outs he had through his career with some of the other artists or writers.
Yeah, and it does go back to the Marvel method that we talked about too, was where they had a hard time distinguishing who gets credit for what, really, between mainly him and Kirby.
Yeah.
And I don't, again, like I didn't really do my research on this aspect a whole lot so I don't know if it was a company thing or was a Stan Lee thing at that time, because he wasn't chairman at the time.
Right.
He was just like the head editor. So I don't know if it was just against Stan and Jack, or it was like Jack and the company, because like you look back on it and Jack definitely should have gotten more credit than he got at the time.
Right.
Which his family has rightfully fought for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's unfortunately the sad part of the business, right? Is because when you're doing it, you're just thinking, oh, we want to get this product out. We want to do this together. And then later, when it's going so well, then the problem comes up with, well, you didn't give me credit.
Yeah, because unfortunately with companies with Marvel and DC at the time, like you're creating these things for the company and you're not creating them for yourself.
Well, hell, I read this about Stan Lee. One of his biggest regrets was using the pen name Stan Lee. He's out there saying, I'm young. I just made out my first book, and I use a fake name.
Right.
No one's gonna know who I am.
Yeah, because well, I mean, he got his name legally changed, but the time
he did. That was not his pseudonym. That was his. Was it a pen name or a pseudonym? Yeah, that's what he used, and he's like said like, man, why did I do that?
Right.
But then, he did legally change his name eventually. But like that was like at the time, he was like, no one's gonna know who I am.
Right. Exactly.
No one's gonna believe me. Like if I tell them that was me.
Which, I mean, true.
Because you want to get credit. You're like,
you do.
Even though you're doing this for the company, it's your baby, it's your dream, it's your work, and you want to get credit for it as you should.
Yeah.
So I can understand where Kirby comes from and not getting a lot of credit for a lot of the earlier work and stuff like that.
And I think part of the reason too that I didn't want to do the research too much into that is that we can do a whole episode or another side episode about comic book rights and stuff like that and the arguments, because I think that not to the extent of his falling out with Kirby, but I think that was part of the reason that Ditko kind of left too.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure about Everett, because Ditko also helped create. He was the artist in Doctor Strange as well.
Right. And I think it might also, and this is just me maybe analyzing as a psychologist would, even though I'm not. But you got to think Stan Lee built himself up from the ground floor.
Yeah.
He was a self-made man.
Literally filling up ink and inkwells to the editor.
Right. So you really think he's going to take any crap from anybody?
No.
Like, and he shouldn't, right? But that could lead to a lot of that disagreement. Is Stan Lee's like, I'm it. I'm the man. I've made myself who I am. I'm not going to listen to you, like kind of thing. And that could definitely lead to a lot of, shortcomings and falling outs and arguments and whatnot.
Right. Exactly. And I can see it, as I said, like we could do whole side episodes of like the Comics Code Authority and, creator rights and these.
Yeah. So let's go into the 90s, right? So Marvel kind of turned the table on DC in like the 70s, right?
Yeah. 70s and 80s.
70s, 80s, Marvel kind of flipped the tables. DC was so popular, Marvel came out of nowhere and kind of just had these relatable characters that everyone loved, everyone was reading, flipped the culture. And then we get into the 90s where Marvel had to file for bankruptcy.
Marvel did a lot. They don't necessarily like. Stan Lee, I believe, had stepped down at the time.
Yeah,
but Marvel did a bunch of awful business moves.
Yeah,
and it wasn't just the whole variant thing. It was like buying Toy Biz and trying to set up their own distribution company that just failed. Right off the bat.
They were getting too big for the bridges.
They were.
Yeah, and that happens when you see a bunch of success. You think it's going to keep lasting.
It's going to keep,
and then you're going to you try to like venture out into things you probably shouldn't, get ahead of yourself, and then
and
shit hits the fan.
Yeah, and they filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah,
in 93, I believe.
Well, and that's how we got Stan Lee selling off rights to different characters, right?
Right. That was Marvel trying to get their heads above water.
Right.
Really.
So they sold off Spider-Man, right? They sold off the Fantastic Four.
Yeah. They to where they sold it off to Spider-Man off to Sony, and Sony still has the rights.
Yeah.
That was when Fantastic Four went to Fox, X-Men went to Fox, Daredevil was at Fox for a while. For whatever reason, I think it's just happenstance that they just held on to Iron Man and Captain America.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're definitely not what they are now at the time.
Yeah, I think they felt that they sold off their highest
they
value
definitely sold off
property.
yeah, exactly. Because X-Men, it was the franchise of the 90s.
Yeah, like the cartoon was amazing.
Right. And then you still had Spider-Man too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you had Spider-Man cartoons, X-Men cartoons, all that stuff coming in the 90s. So yeah, they went bankrupt. They sold off a bunch of stuff. And then we start getting the Marvel films.
We did.
So the first was Spider-Man. Is that the first Marvel film?
I mean, technically, you probably want to start with Blade, I guess.
Well, true. I don't think I always forget that Blade's Marvel.
Yeah, but the first X-Men movie came before Spider-Man.
Did it? Okay.
So because X-Men was 2000, and then Spider-Man was 2002, and then I think just all of the success of the X-Men franchise, Fantastic Four, the first Fantastic Four movie is just it's there.
Yeah,
but
that movie is cursed.
The three Raimi movies.
This is cursed.
Yeah,
that is cursed.
The three Raimi movies really, I think, is what made Marvel look at their properties and go, we can do that.
Yeah. So, and here's a funny fact that I knew: Raimi did not want Stan Lee to do a cameo.
Yeah.
Which what would go in through his mind?
I don't know. I think I know he said he regretted it, but that cameo is the first Stan Lee cameo,
right.
I believe.
That set the precedence for all these cameos that we love in all these MCU movies.
Yeah, because then you had I can't remember his cameo in the first Fantastic Four movie, but I think in the second one, maybe it was both movies, he's their mailman.
Yeah.
And then that leads into him being mistaken for Hugh Hefner.
Right, that was amazing.
Yeah.
There's so many. We could go through like the guy on the bus for Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
He's the drunk, the World War II veteran and
Age of Ultron.
All this stuff.
I mean, and he still popped up in non-Marvel movies. Where in Amazing Spider-Man 1, he's like this librarian, and Lizard and Spider-Man are fighting behind him. And he's just got headphones and just keeps on trucking. And I did read that he did film his cameo for Avengers 4.
Yes.
But I don't know about Spider-Man Far From Home. I'm going to assume he's in Captain Marvel.
Yeah, I think
I haven't heard.
What I heard was the last one is Avengers 4.
Is Avengers 4?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know that Far From Home is done filming.
Which is crazy because if you hear about, he just died last week, right? And one of his friends came to I think it was the director, maybe. Someone came over, or maybe it might be his agent, said that he was still willing, even at 96, almost 96, to continue to, if he could, in good health, do all these camps. It was one of his favorite things. I mean, there's a video out on the internet after he passed of him sitting there talking about his fans and how much he loved the fans.
Right.
Our buddy Andy has a picture with Stan Lee in a giant Dragon Con where they did a giant outdoor Marvel cosplay picture, and he's there with the fans. He loved the characters and the fans. He was just so passionate about them.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any entertainment business, you're nothing without the fans.
Oh, absolutely.
Sorry, but
if you don't have fans of your properties, no one's going to buy them, and you're not going to be successful. Period.
So I do have one Stan Lee story of my own that part of me is just slightly embarrassed about, but I'm gonna tell it anyway. I was in Chicago, and he was at a convention in Chicago, and early 20s me drank a lot. Not gonna lie, I'll just throw that out there. Sometimes early 30s me drinks a lot.
We all drink a lot.
However, hotel bar, and I'm sloppy drunk, but I'm a little buzzed. And he was walking with his I don't know, entourage, bodyguards, whatever you want, whatever you have. And like early 20s me is just like, whoa, Stan Lee. And I just got this like wave acknowledgement and a point. And I'm just like, that just made my night.
Well,
I'm done drinking, but that made my night. So that's my one dumb Stan Lee story.
That's all. I mean, I never got to meet him.
That's as close as I ever got.
And I would have loved to at some point go meet him. When we've on this show, we've talked about we got to see him soon because we knew this might be coming. Unfortunately, but I am sad. I'm really heartbroken that I never got to meet the man who created so many characters, including Iron Man, who's like my all-time favorite.
It was one that if I ever, the other closest I came to was like the next day, and I had a copy, like a Spider-Man book that I wanted him to sign.
Yeah,
but his autograph was $80 or $100, and it's just. Again, early 20s me was just like, oh,
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
I mean, it is a lot of money, but it's Stan Lee.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I had that thought, but at the same time too, it was a lot of money for me at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Where I'm trying to buy a house and saving up for a wedding, I couldn't justify it.
Oh, I know. I'm not saying like I'm not trying to rag on you for it.
Yeah.
But you're an idiot. But
I am because that marriage has failed.
But that's one of those things, I'm always going to look back, they say to don't live with regrets, but I think that's an okay regret because man,
it's so hard to.
Yeah. I've loved to meet him. I have a copy of Demon in the Bottle.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to have him sign that.
If I ever had the guts to get it out of its plastic sleeve and out of a secret vault that I have. No, I really don't have a secret vault, but it is hidden. My Amazing Fantasy, I would have just had him sign it and then immediately sold it.
No, you wouldn't. You would keep that. You'd be buried with it.
Yeah, probably because I'm going to be buried with it as it is. So I think that's all we've got for Stan Lee. I mean, it fascinates me that even before he created the Fantastic Four, this guy lived a life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're looking at a guy who got a break in the beginning, right?
Because, he did, yeah.
He happened to know.
Sometimes it's not what you know; it's who you know.
He happened to know somebody there,
right?
But he didn't. It's not like he just got brought in and was amazing right from the start.
Right from the start,
he had to work his way up. He had to build, trust. He had to, work with writers, artists to understand the whole process. And then he finally got to tell his story. And once he got to tell his story, it was everything everybody needed. It was the comics that people needed to read. And I'm not trying to bash DC at all. DC is a great company as well. And Batman's had flaws over the years now. Superman, they kind of give him flaws over the years as well. But Stan Lee started that.
Yeah.
Stan Lee started the whole ideal of superheroes are people too.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to have to pay rent and they're going to have to get gas and get groceries and they're going to have marriage failures. They're going to have,
keep their secret identities away from their aunts.
Right. They'll have to have addictions. They're going to have maybe social issues, like whatever. He brought them all in and that gave comics the push they needed to actually be relevant again.
Putting social commentary into comics was the best step.
And that was that was another thing he used to do. He used to do on I forget the page is called in the comics, but he would write to the fans.
That was he called it like Stan's Soapbox.
Yeah, it was Stan's Soapbox. And he would literally answer questions from fans.
Yeah.
Like that wrote into him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just read one the other night that was written back to him by what's his face? Shoot. Oh my God. Andy sends the picture and it was the director now.
Kevin Smith?
No, not Kevin Smith. It was shoot.
Andy, send us your wisdom. I always kind of found it funny too that each letter page, he gave a different creative name for each character. So it wasn't just your standard here's your bullshit letter page, fans.
Right.
He had this creative name for Spider-Man fan page, the Fantastic Four fan page.
Yeah, so I think that it showed how much he knew what was going on. It wasn't just a job. It wasn't just something else for him. It was a real was a real deal. Like it was actually like a passion, and he shared it with his fans, and I think fans reciprocated it, 100%. And I think that's, you can't beat that.
Right.
And I want to say it's the guy who created Game of Thrones. That wrote Game of Thrones.
I mean, there's Benioff.
No, the actual book.
Oh, George R. R. Martin?
Yeah, I want to say it was George R. R. Martin that wrote into him.
Oh, and that's what you're right. You're right. It was George R. R. Martin because you're 100% right. It was George R. R. Martin, and he was talking about how there was just like factual inaccuracies in the book, and Stan Lee's just like, well, sure. Like,
well, no,
but it
was because like something happened to the character like before, got hurt really severely or dead, and all of a sudden he's back, and he was all upset because you didn't write about how he came back. And then Stan Lee calls George R. R. Martin Georgie. Like
Georgie. Yeah,
okay,
just,
Georgie.
Oh, like way to just tilt, which is
that's
just
so amazing though.
Really,
like that's
really funny.
Like that's Stan Lee. That's who he was.
Yeah, it was really, really funny to me. Shoot, now I can't find it either.
What?
That post you're talking about.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately,
I apologize. We have so many texting threads between all of us.
I know we've shared it, and it's just one of those things where I was like, man, that was so funny. I want to talk about it, but I really should have probably pulled it up before we started recording. Oh, here it is. I got it.
Yeah.
All right.
We found it right at the same time.
All right. So I'm just going to read this to you guys, and it's a back page of where the fans get to write in to Stan. And
do you want me to do Stan's response?
So I'll give a synopsis real quick. He's talking about something, how someone was paralyzed, and now all of a sudden he's bringing back in full control of everything, and now nothing's explained, and all these factual things that George R. R. Martin gives his address as well in New Jersey. And then Stan Lee just pretty much says, wow, our face is red. You want the truth, Georgie? We just plain forgot.
Oh, man. Like reading George R. R. Martin's letter too is just like, it's very just like message boardy bullshit.
It was
as much as I like George R. R. Martin.
Reddit before Reddit exists.
Yeah, really.
Like
is what it comes across as.
It was
really
like,
does.
It comes across as a troll sitting on the keyboard somewhere.
Yeah.
Like yeah.
Mom, bathroom.
Right.
Bathroom.
Like all these things. And I think that's just one of the many reasons Stan's going to be missed and loved, and I'm going to miss his cameos. Like,
yeah,
seeing those, although the internet has come up with a great idea, and I 100% support this idea.
What's that?
Because if you think about it, Deadpool is the only character that will know Stan Lee is dead.
Yeah.
Right? Because
right.
he knows he has that fourth wall barrier.
Right.
That Deadpool in suit with sunglasses or glasses, fake wig, gray hair, and mustache does all the cameos going forward.
That'd be good.
I think that would be golden. I fully support this idea.
That would be real good.
And I don't think it'll harsh or taint the memory of Stan Lee. I think it would only add to it.
Yeah. The other thing I heard, which I kind of want to happen because they're doing it definitely out of respect. But I believe it was Chris Hemsworth had the idea of trying to get all of the actors, because they had a private, and then they're gonna have a little bit more of a public showing for him. All of the Marvel actors to come in costume.
I think that's perfect.
I think that'd be amazing
to have the characters themselves pay respect to the creator.
Right.
Absolutely. I think that'd be amazing. Well, Tim, I appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge. I know you're one of our resident comic, historians.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, there are a few things that I did not know, especially about his what he did in the service.
Right. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, and we wanted to do this episode just to give for those of you that might not know who Stan was fully, and to pay tribute to a man that gave everybody so much happiness, joy, and even, sometimes a outlet,
Right.
to deal with stress and problems, because these characters had the same problems you may have had in your life. And I really appreciate you, Stan. I wish I would have met you.
Yeah. He's one of the few people that I can say, and not even exaggerating, like he has touched countless people.
Yeah. So
like in a very like Walt Disney-ish way.
Oh, absolutely. And to give you a perspective, I got emotional about him dying, and there's only one other entertainer that I got emotional about, and that was Robin Williams. So the fact that like I can hold Stan Lee and Robin Williams on the same pedestal is just a testament to him as a person.
They were both innovators in their own way.
Absolutely.
So, hopefully you have enjoyed our little retrospective and little conversation between just Sweeney and I. We were very close to just making this an NPR special and just drinking coffee and talking about Schvetty balls. But hopefully our schedules will open up more, and we will get back to a more regular basis with the four of us.
Absolutely. So once again, thank you for tuning into the Hateful Geeks. This is Sweeney.
And this is Tim.
And Excelsior.
Ha-ha!
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!